They thought it was just another road, no name, no signs, just the shortcut the GPS suggested, a quiet, empty path through the fog. At first it felt like luck, no traffic, no delays, but something was wrong. The air was heavier and the silence felt unnatural. Then the radio switched on by itself. A voice came through, broken, distant. A warning they didn't understand until it was too late, because once you take this road, there's no turning back. Welcome to Cedium.
The road didn't have a name. There were no markings, signs, or anything else that would have shown that it was ever on a map. There was only a thin strip of cracked asphalt going off into the darkness. Thick fog seemed to be moving in a way that didn't make sense. Josh and Emily didn't mean to take it. No one ever did. It was suggested by the GPS as an alternative path, a way to get around the traffic jam on the highway behind them. Being able to drive on a smooth, empty road without any delays seemed like a blessing at first. But something changed when they turned onto it. The air felt denser, and there was more complete quiet. The scenery became stranger as they drove further. Along the side of the road were billboards advertising names that neither of them had ever heard of. Gas stations had deals that seemed too good to be true. It said on bright signs that a good night's rest, but the parking lots and windows of the motels were empty. It seemed like they had driven right into an old, forgotten part of America. After that, the radio turned on by itself. Through the speakers, a whisper that was jumbled and broken could be heard. The voice wasn't male or female, and it had a flat, faraway tone. However, it was clear that the person was aware. You shouldn't be here yet. Josh gave Emily a quick look. She had her hand on the console and her breath was short. The GPS screen was shaking. The road ahead turned and straightened out. It did the math over and over, but the road never finished. Through the fog, the headlights lit up buildings that shouldn't have been there, structures without doors and shops without name. Shadows hung over the road, and people stood still and watched. It looked like they were having a chat, but their faces were off. They had blurred and stretched faces with eyes that were too big or too small. Josh took a tighter hold on the wheel. We're turning back. Emily took a deep breath. I don't think we can. She was right. There was no way to go back. The road had changed, moving back and forth like a live thing and going around and around them over and over again. The view became less clear as they drove. Everywhere you look, it's the same motel, gas store, and road sign with letters that you can't read. It's like they never left. After a while, they saw the gas station. In the middle of nowhere, there was a single bright light that seemed out of place. It had flickering fluorescent lights inside, but the shelves were full of things from a different era. They had never heard of those soda brand. Candy bars with old, worn-out wrappers. Newsprint that didn't have a date. The register was left alone, and a thin layer of dust had formed on top of its button. The worker stood in front of the door. Big, way too big. His outfit was clean but old-fashioned, and he wore a pale name tag with letters that were too faint to read. Because his smile was too big, it showed teeth that weren't right. They were too many, too sharp, and stacked. Josh turned off the engine. Emily put her hand on his arm. Don't get out. In the silence, her voice was almost impossible to hear over the buzzing of the neon light. But the gas gauge was almost empty. There was no other option. Josh slowly let out a breath and reached for the doorknob. From the station came a sound that was soft, far away, and almost musical. A bell. The kind that rings when someone walks in. Afterwards, darkness. Nothing. Not moving. Only black. Then, just out of reach, somewhere in the void, the bell rings again. Someone came into the store. There was a thick, stifling silence that came from all sides. Emily's breath caught, and she dug her fingers into Josh's arm as if to ground him in reality. But things had already changed. It was there, all by itself in the middle of nowhere, with its neon lights buzzing in the strangely quiet air. The guard still looked, and his head was tilted just a bit, as if he were hearing for something that only he could hear. The bell went off. Someone came into the store. They hadn't moved, though. Josh took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what to do because his fingers were still curled around the door handle. The boring static that had started to creep into the car speakers was drowned out by his heart beating fast. The radio had gone silent just now, but now something was coming back through, low, jumbled whispers that layered on top of each other like sounds on an old cassette tape. Emily's hold on his arm got stronger. She said in a whisper, "We need to go. Josh, we need to go right now." He looked at her, but the headlights went out before he could say anything. For half a second, the gas station's light dimmed just enough to make everything seem less solid and real. Something was different when the light came back on. The worker was no longer there. Josh couldn't get his breath out. He looked around the station, the empty parking lot, and the shelves that could be seen through the dirty window. Nothing. Then there was a soft click coming from inside the car. Emily jumped back. What was that? Josh turned in his seat and looked around the inside of the car quickly. The windows were still rolled up and the doors were still locked. But now something was different. The air now smelled different, like something old and metal. Afterwards, the bell rang once more. Josh quickly turned his attention to the gas station. The door wasn't moving. But now, something stood in the aisles that could just barely be seen through the window. A shape that was too still to be a person. Josh felt his heart beat hard against his ribs. He turned the key to start the car. The auto wouldn't start. He whispered, "Come on," and twisted more. Nothing. The engine didn't even try to start. She took a shaky breath out. Josh. The key made his hand shake. Again, the gas station lights flickered, making long, strange shadows. Inside, the shape had changed. They moved instantly, from near the back wall to right in front of the bar in an instant. It wasn't a step or a shift. Josh pulled on the key once more. The car didn't start. Then someone knocked. One careful tap on the window on the passenger side. Emily cried out. Josh's heart stopped beating. He turned his head, but there was nothing there. Nobody. Just the thick, suffocating fog and the frightened looks on their faces as they looked into the glass. The knock came again. This time it's louder, better. You know that feeling when you're alone, but you sense someone watching? The air gets heavier, your skin prickles, like something unseen is just waiting. Have you ever experienced that? Tell me in the comments if you've ever felt that eerie presence in the dark. Maybe, just maybe, you weren't really alone. The window stayed clear, but there was a force pressing against it that couldn't be seen. It warped the glass and made it bulge inward just a little, as if something on the other side was pushing in from the outside. It was Josh who hit the dashboard with his hand. Start, damn it. The car kept its peace. Emily gripped her seatbelt tightly and let out short, sharp gasps of air. Josh, please. The voice then came back. The whispers got louder and stronger from the radio, combining into a single clear sentence that wasn't theirs. You were never supposed to stop. Josh's stomach turned. The knock came again, 3 times, quickly and loudly. Afterwards, the gas store lost its lights. They were eaten up by darkness. There was nothing for a moment. There was no road, no station, and no car. There was only a deep, empty pit that went on forever. And there was a sound in that darkness, an oar step, right outside the door on the driver's side. Josh couldn't breathe. Emily's whole body was shaking as she pressed her fingers into his arm. Yet another step, one more. Then, out of the blue, the voice from the radio came back, this time not warped and not far away. This time, it happened in the car. Drive. The engine started up with a roar. Josh didn't think twice. He slammed his foot down on the gas pedal, and the car jerked forward, its tires screaming against the uneven road. There was no longer a straight road ahead. It turned, bent, and stretched like a living thing, but Josh didn't care. He just drove. In the rearview mirror, the gas store was no longer there. As the fog got thicker, it ate up everything behind them. As they watched the car go by, everyone on the side of the road turned their heads at the same time. Their blurry faces tilted in an odd way. The radio began to crackle again, faster. Josh did what he was told. Even though the road seemed to go on forever, the headlights started to pick out motion, light, and color ahead. The real world. It was there, but I couldn't get to it. The fog got lighter. The road got straighter. The signs were once again easy to spot. Afterwards, they came back. The car took off on a highway it knew and quickly joined the flow of traffic. The headlights and horns went off. Everything was okay again. Josh let out a gasp and grabbed the wheel tight. Emily was sitting in the passenger seat with her arms around herself and tears quietly running down her face. The GPS went off. Route recalculated. Josh took a look. The screen looked fine. The map once more made sense. A big highway sign was in front of us. Los Angeles, 50 miles. He took a weak breath. Emily did not talk. They didn't look back at each other. The gas gauge was full. The road felt real again. Everything made sense again. They both didn't say anything, though. With his hands on the wheel so tight that they hurt, Josh's knuckles turned white. The highway stretched out in front of them, and on the horizon, the lights of cities far away flickered. They were back now. They got away in some way. Still, Emily's hands were curled into fists in the passenger seat, making her look stiff. She was controlling her shallow breath. She would sneak a quick look in the rearview mirror every few seconds, but you couldn't read her face. Josh almost asked her what she was looking for, but he knew what she was looking for. He also tried to find it. It didn't matter what place they were leaving. They were free from the road with no name, the gas station, the thing in the convenience store, and the radio whispering. But that feeling, that heavy weight in his chest and the cold pit in his stomach, was still there. Outside, everything looked fine, but something was wrong. There was something different in the air inside the car. It wasn't empty in the silence. It was hearing. Josh took a deep breath and sucked hard on the wheel. The engine was making a slight hum, and he could hear the tires slamming against the pavement. But there was something else below that. A sound that was so soft it was hard to hear. Being there. It was heard by Emily too. "Josh," she finally said in a whisper. It was hard to hear her because her voice was so soft. He didn't answer right away. He was scared to. He didn't want to look at her, but he did. "What?" Her fingers got tighter in her lap as she thought about it. "She told me to look in the mirror." Josh did not wish to. His heart beat faster. It hurt his face. He felt like his whole body was telling him to ignore her, keep driving, and never look back. He had to, though. He carefully and slowly turned his attention to the rearview mirror. He didn't see anything at first. Behind them, there was nothing but the road, with the odd set of headlights from cars far away. For miles, there was nothing on the highway but dark asphalt and a few trees along the side. A shape. It was too far away to see specifics, but it was close enough to tell that it hadn't been there before. A person standing in the middle of the road that was hard to see because of the red lights from the cars behind them. It wasn't someone. Not really. Josh felt sick to his stomach. It was the gas station worker. Way too big. Not enough. Still happy. "I'm still watching." Another whisper, "Josh," from Emily. "It's still there." It was going 70 miles per hour. They had been gone for miles. It just wasn't possible. It really shouldn't be possible. It was, though. Josh started to breathe less deeply. His hands moved around on the wheel. Emily told her to keep driving. Don't stop. Neither of them planned to stop. He put more weight on the gas button with his foot. The speedometer kept going up as the car sped forward. The view was blurry, with a rush of empty highway and dimly lit sign. He looked in the mirror one more time. There was more of a person. Not possible. Josh's hands were shaking. He quickly turned his attention back to the road. After that, look in the mirror again. It was getting even closer. For half a second, the headlights of an oncoming semi-truck lit it up, and Josh saw it for the first time. The gas station worker was wrong. His limbs were too long. It looked like he had never been human but had studied people and tried to look like them. His skin was too smooth and even. His eyes were too deep and black, making pits in his face, and his smile was frozen. It didn't bother him. He wasn't moving. But Josh was getting closer every time he turned his head away. Emily began to cry. In silence, she was hunched over and shaking hands. Josh tightened his teeth and tried to keep his eyes on the road. He told himself, "We're almost to the city," to help her believe it too. "We just have to get to people. We just have to." The radio made a noise. Josh's heart stopped beating. The speakers were filled with static, which hissed, moved, and made words. The same sounds that were distorted and layered before. The same thing that had been whispering from nowhere. "You were never supposed to leave." Josh hit the radio with his hand. It got louder as the chatter went on. She shook her head and put her hands over her ears. "Make it stop. You brought it with you." Josh took a deep breath. The interior was lit up by the headlights of a car coming the other way. The whole inside of the car was lit up for a split second, and at that very moment, 3 people could be seen in the mirror. Josh, Sheila, There's also something in the back seat. Josh turned. The tires screeched as the car went off the road. Emily screamed and rushed her hands to the dashboard. Before Josh could get back in control, the back tires kicked up dirt as the car skidded dangerously close to the guardrail. He gasped for air, and the wheel hurt his pinky so badly. Emily didn't ask what went on. She knew. Very slowly, she turned her head to look at the back seat. Nothing. Not full. They both knew better, though. The radio stopped having fuzz. The road went on forever. Now the city lights were getting closer, shining like a beacon in the distance. Josh kept going. They both stopped looking in the mirror. The city lights in the distance looked like they would bring back routine and safety. Josh kept his eyes on them, and his grip on the driving wheel was so tight it hurt. Emily was no longer crying, but she was still breathing unevenly and shallowly. They both kept quiet. The car drove smoothly down the highway, but inside it was very quiet, which didn't seem right. There was a difference. They tried to get off that road, but it wouldn't let them. Josh really wanted to believe it was all in his head. His thoughts were going crazy after what they saw. But the car's air wasn't right. Heavy, charged with something that can't be seen or reached. He could feel it, pushing against the edges of what he could see and hiding in the spaces between his heartbeat. Emily moved around in her seat. It was so tight that her knuckles were turning white, and her hands were clasped together. Her lips were pressed together in a thin line as she stared straight ahead. That it was over and they were safe now, he told her. But I couldn't find the words. He looked in the rearview mirror instead. Just a quick look. Nothing. There was no one in the back seat. The feeling didn't go away, though. His stomach turned. He told himself not to look at her again. He told himself to keep his eyes on the road and keep driving until they got to the city and were in a normal world with people, light, and things. But he felt compelled to check and be sure. He looked back at the mirror slowly. There was still nothing in the back seat. The seatbelt was on, though. Josh couldn't get his breath out. He put more pressure on the wheel with his fingers. They didn't have the seatbelt on when they left the gas stop. He knew for sure. He could hear his heart beating in his ears like a sound of fear. The engine of the car kept humming, and the tires squeaked against the road. Emily must have noticed that he was tense because she cocked her head and spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. What? Josh took a deep breath. Nothing. She didn't believe him. It was clear to him from the way her shoulders tensed up and her hands got tighter in her lap. She didn't push him, though. It's possible that she was scared to hear the answer. There was more of the city now. There were streetlights all along the highway, and their light cast long shadows on the road. When other cars pulled up, their headlights were bright and their presence grounded the scene. They were not alone for the first time in what seemed like hours. It should have been comfortable to see taillights ahead and normal traffic moving in a way that was easy to predict. That made Josh even more uneasy, though. The radio then turned on. They had both avoided touching it. It came out of the speakers as static. At first it was quiet, and then it got louder. The same messed up whispers. Josh took a deep breath. He reached for the dial and tried to turn it off, but the sounds came together to make words before he could. You left something behind. She took a sharp breath and turned her head toward him. Josh turned off the radio. There was an eerie silence after that. They both just stared ahead, not wanting to talk or admit what they had heard. Then, from behind, a soft click. Normally, they might not have noticed the sound because it was so small and unimportant. In the still car, though, it was very loud. The safety belt. Josh's skin turned cold. He chose not to look. He was unable to see. It was shaking now for Emily. She was shaking so badly that he could see it out of the corner of his eye. Her breath came in short, unsteady gasps. She had also heard it. One more click. Take your time. Thoughtful. It's like taking off a belt one notch at a time. Josh had sweaty hands. His heart was beating fast in his ear. He stomped his foot on the gas pedal to speed up the car. He held onto the wheel so tightly that he thought his bones would break. It was close to the city. So close. Only a few more miles to go. One more click. Emily cried out in a broken whisper. She didn't turn around. No, she wouldn't. Josh tried hard to keep his eyes on the road. The air in the car did move, though. The temperature went down. Afterwards, breathe. Behind his ear. Josh's muscles were tense and begged him to move, turn, and see, but he couldn't. Not at all. His heart was beating very fast, and he tightened his grip on the wheel. She pressed herself against the passenger door and put her hands over her mouth, making a choked sound. She had also felt it. The air was slow, thoughtful. It looked like something was leaning forward. The radio turned back on by itself. Not any static this time. One sound only. A laugh. Low laugh. Josh felt nothing in his body. There were city lights just ahead of us. Safety. The truth. The speedometer went up as he pressed the gas pedal harder. No one laughed anymore. Afterwards, something. Okay. In the middle. You can't outrun me. Josh slammed on the brakes. At the edge of the city, the car came to a sudden stop. Tires were smoking. As another car moved around them, their horn went off. Josh was having trouble breathing, and his chest hurt. Emily couldn't stop shaking, and her hands were still over her mouth. There was a long pause. Josh turned around slowly and shook. There was no one in the back seat. Not a seatbelt. Nothing. Not present. Nothing. The air was still not right, though. There was the city right there. The streets, the lights, and the people. The everyday world. But the space between them felt different inside the car. Emily's voice was almost too quiet to hear. Is it gone? Josh looked at the empty spot, at the door that was shut, at the completely normal and clean inside of the car. Then he turned around, didn't answer, and started driving again. They didn't talk to each other again all night, but the static was still there, deep in the radio, below the quiet. The city spread out in front of them, its steady flow of bright lights and people. It was a sharp contrast to the car's empty silence. As Josh drove, his knuckles turned white as his fingers stayed on the wheel. Emily sat still next, held her breath, and squished her hands together in her lap so hard that her nails dug into her skin. They both kept quiet. The distant hum of traffic, the flickering neon signs, and the odd honk of a horn told me that everything outside was fine. It should have made them feel better. There wasn't. The car's weight hadn't gone down. It felt like thick air was pressing down on their skin and into their lungs. Josh was sure that the presence was still there. He didn't need to check. He wouldn't look at himself in the mirror. The form he saw in the back seat didn't register with him. He didn't want to think about how the seatbelt was fastened. He was thinking about the road ahead and the hotel sign. He wanted to find a place where they could lock a door, turn on all the lights, and for a moment act like they were safe. When he pulled into the first hotel parking lot they saw, Emily didn't ask why. As soon as the car stopped, she got out. Her body was tense and quickly moving, like she was afraid of being pulled back inside. Josh didn't think twice about following. The hallway smelled like old air conditioner and industrial cleaner. The bright fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows on the tiled floor. The man at the front desk barely looked at them as he processed their check-in. He looked bored, which was very different from how scared they both were. Josh signed the receipt with shaking hand. He tried not to look at himself in the glass wall behind the desk. Emily stood next to him, not touching, but close enough that he could feel her body shaking with fear. There was no big deal when the key card was put on the bar. The third floor. Josh took it, thanked them with a nod, and then turned to go to the lift. Emily came after. It was too quiet in the lift. They looked back at themselves in the mirrors and saw that they were pale, shaking, and with empty eyes. Josh had to fight the urge to look in the corners of the glass for anything else that might be mirrored behind them. The doors opened with a soft chime, and they walked out into a hallway with more doors that were the same. The dim yellow lights buzzed softly. Their steps were muffled by the rug. The number on the metal plate showed them the room was at the end of the hall. It took Josh a moment to put the key card into the lock. He then pushed the door open and heard a soft click. The room was small, useful, and easy to forget. There was a bed with stiff white sheets, a desk made of wood against the wall, and a TV on top of the desk. A single window with thick curtains closed. On the left is a bathroom with a door that is just a little open. It had a light metallic smell and the smell of bleach. Josh walked in first and turned on every light he could find. The light above. The lights. The light in the bathroom. Emily hung around the doorway, as if she was afraid to go inside. He turned around to face her, but his throat was dry. She looked at him, but it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. She finally crossed the threshold and closed the door behind her. Josh shut it. They didn't talk. He took a deep breath out and sat down in the chair next to the desk. He ran his hand through his hair. Emily leaned against the edge of the bed and gripped the blanket under her. Her shoulders were tense. It should have been safe in that room. It wasn't. The air was thick and charged, which wasn't right. Josh's heart rate wouldn't stop. He could feel something behind the edges of his awareness, but he couldn't see it. Emily's hands moved around on the fabric. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she talked. "It's still here." Josh did not reply. He did not have to. He also felt it. The TV turned on and off quickly. The sharp, annoying burst of static filled the room all at once. Emily jerked and gasped for air. Josh jumped up, grabbed the remote, and pressed the power button. The screen flickered, but it wouldn't go away. The static moved, making forms and shadows that moved in the skewed gray. From the noise, a figure came into view. Someone big, not very thick, grateful. The gas station worker. Josh pressed the button once more, but this time it was harder. The picture stayed the same. The smile on the screen got bigger than it should have been. The person didn't move. Emily made a sound in her throat and then gripped the blanket even tighter. Josh pulled the plug out of the wall. The screen went dark. The fuzz went away. It was worse when there was quiet after that. Josh turned around, and his breathing was all over the place. Emily was looking at the mirror on the wall across from her bed. There was no color on her face at all. He looked where she looked. The room could be seen in the mirror. The bed, the desk. How about that TV? Sheila, himself, plus something else. A shape on the floor. Next to Emily, sitting down. A figure that was there in the image but not in real life. Grateful. Josh moved without stopping to think. His body moved before his mind could react. He took the mirror off the wall by ripping it with both hands. It crashed to the ground with such force that glass broke all over the place. Emily gave a sharp gasp and slid backwards against the bed. Josh stood still, and his breathing was rough. It was back to normal in the room. There was no mirror. The TV was turned off. Emily was the only thing in the bed. But the air was still not right. Afterwards, a whisper, soft, far away. "You brought me with you." Josh stumbled backwards, his heart beating fast. Emily's hands were over her mouth, and she was shaking. The voice wasn't coming from the TV. The broken glass wasn't where it came from. It came from the bed. Josh grabbed Emily by the arm and pulled her up. His voice was rough. "We're leaving." She didn't argue back. They grabbed their bags without thinking about what they might have left behind. As they fumbled with the lock, they forced the door open and people spilled out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, making shapes that moved in strange ways. Their steps were quick and frantic. Their path took them down the hall, to the elevator, and back down through the hallway. As they walked out through the glass doors into the night, the desk worker barely looked up. They left the car where it was. Josh was unsure. Emily's breath was rough as she stopped next to him. Josh. It felt normal in the city. The streets were full of people. Cars honked and people walked by, and music from bars and restaurants could be heard. The world was true. But the car, it wasn't bare. Josh could feel it. There was something inside. Emily's hand was icy cold as it gripped his wrist. "We can't." Inside, the radio turned on. The speakers let out a lot of static, which made the air crackle. Then I heard a voice. "Stay calm. Hold on. You can run, but you'll never be alone again." The car doors opened on their own. Josh and Emily stood still on the ground, not being able to breathe or move. There was more chatter coming from the car. Something moved in the rear-view mirror. There is a shape in the back seat, waiting, grateful. Josh and Emily managed to escape, or at least, that's what they think. But they weren't the first to find Cetialum, and maybe they won't be the last. If you want to uncover another story that might change the way you see the world around you, click on the next video now. But be careful, some doors, once opened, can never be closed again.